happy to see paved highway as I was at the end of that thing. So now we made it to Happy
Wow.
Valley.
What's
Welcome,
the
friends,
temperature like over
to
there?
Happy Valley, Labrador.
Yeah, it's
Dag-
warm. It's warm here. It's not hot, not like you guys are
Oh.
having it, but it's 80 degrees with some humidity, which is a bit unusual for them. Apparently, these guys from Prince Edward Island, who were part of the motorcycle group, were telling me that usually Americans from the Atlantic coast come up to Canada. A lot of them have summer homes and things just to escape the summer heat, but they've been having their own heat wave. I'm hearing from the news.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So a lot of nature, a lot of nothing but nature out there. So you can, if you want to get lost, it's easy to get lost.
Oh, tremendous. It's hard not to get.
But
All they have is road building crews.
but I would assume the winters are just gruesome.
That's what I would imagine. I go to a lot of these craft shows, and I speak to some of these guys who are selling their woodworking products and things. And I said, how can you do this much work for whatever they were charging for it? And they said, well, there's long winters here. There's not much else to do.
Right, right.
But a tremendous wilderness. And we saw 3 moose. Nita, who makes quite a study of these things, assured me that 2 of them were, they preferred same gender partners. I have no idea how she knows these things about anyone, let alone moose, but she claims to have that expertise. And we saw our first moose in a place called Gambo, Newfoundland. Walked across the highway, huge thing. The car ahead of us stopped. So we named that moose as CFAs in Newfoundland. If anybody entering Newfoundland who's not a Newfoundlander gets a CFA designation. Now in Ontario, we take that to be a chartered financial analyst, but in Newfoundland, they call it come from away. So you're a come from away. And if you spot a moose, you have the right to name it. So we named it Rambo.
All right.
Rambo from Gambo.
You just reminded me, I don't know if you guys ever heard or watched the movie Dersu Uzala, 1975 film by famous Japanese movie director. And it's about an expedition to the Russian Siberia and the steppes. And you just, I was thinking, okay, this sounds like a Dersu Uzala expedition into nowhere.
Well, that's about what it's going to be like. I think. I mean, we've still got the longest portion of it to go, but it's paved.
Big difference.
Is Happy Valley on an island?
No, it's on the mainland of Labrador. We haven't seen much of it. We just got in last night and spent most of the late afternoon evening finding a hotel room.
Oh, we
Can't hear you.
Hear him. No, we still can't hear Mac Laptop Vinci.
How about now?
No, you're muffled.
Muffled.
You may be sitting on your mic. I see Dom joined us. Welcome, Dominic.
I see. Is it
And
Dominic? Or is
I see Dom there.
Domination?
But I see a Greek philosopher there. I don't know who that is. Plato or Aristotle or one of those.
Me.
Ah.
FPM. Search, find, pursue, management. No.
All right. So what are we going to talk about today? Something nice, abstract, complex, against the grain.
I
What are you proposing to us?
am uncertain about Heisenberg's uncertain
You're uncertain
uncertain
about certainty.
uncertainty principle.
You're uncertain about uncertainty.
And uh, look, when did consciousness enter the picture in physics? John von Neumann, a brilliant mathematician who was at the leading edge of many of the most dramatic developments in the 1930s and 40s, from developing the logical basis of modern computers to strategic game theory, was the first to clearly lay out the logical basis of the quantum reality problem. Von Neumann was not satisfied with Bohr's or Heisenberg's interpretation. He continued to press the point at which precise moment in the process of quantum measurement does the electron wave change into an electron particle. Von Neumann was forced by his own logic reluctantly to come to a surprising and to some rather distasteful answer, that it is the consciousness of the observer that causes the change.
Ta-da!
We are creating our world just by observing it. That's incredible.
No, that's that. No. You wait a minute.
That's what
Wait a
von
minute.
Neumann says. Concludes. That's why it's
Yeah, well, if he did, either
it's
I disagree with that, or somebody misinterpreted
surprising
him,
and rather
just like many people misinterpret other people.
That's why I
Good
am
morning, Mike. I see Mike walking.
uncertain.
Mike,
Hey, good morning.
You exercise quite a bit, don't you?
Good morning.
Dude, I should do the same thing. Go out there and walk it out.
Yeah, it's beautiful right now. The these storms I think that are going to be coming in are kind of
It's
making for
Hydro.
nice weather.
Yeah.
Is my sound working yet?
Now it is.
Now it is.
Morning,
Okay.
Joel.
Good morning, Mike. Nice to see you again.
You too.
Read Dr. Taylor's latest book, or even know the title.
No, or at least I don't.
No one knows. I'm curious about that. I don't know if a lay person could understand it, or whether you need some more advanced mathematics knowledge to be able to read it.
Is he sending out signed copies?
I hope so. I'd sign up for one. I'd even pay the postage, even if I didn't understand it.
What does a signature look like? Like a mathematical formula?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's kind of like Prince's symbol. Mm.
So
All right.
in Canada, they're forcing vaccinations on all federal employees and all employees of federally regulated industries. And I got to tell you, they take masking and distancing very, very seriously in maritime Canada. We've been traveling for about 6 weeks now, and
wow.
we couldn't even get into, we went from Ontario to Quebec, and then we went into New Brunswick. We had to show our vaccination document, and they asked where we're going, and I said we're going to Prince Edward Island. And he said, well, do you have your PEI paperwork done? And I said, what paperwork? Because we've been following the news, and it's far as we knew, all the Atlantic provinces in Canada were in one bubble. And he said, no, PEI has a specific paperwork to enter the province. So when we got settled, we looked on the internet and found out that PEI requires you to upload your ID and your paperwork and so on. And you have to be a resident of the Atlantic bubble for 2 weeks. So we had to wait in New Brunswick for 2 weeks before
Wow.
PEI would allow us. That's where I am now. But what
So,
I'm,
hey, couple questions about that.
yep,
The in America, the FDA has only granted an emergency authorization. Does Canada have a different regulatory body, and does it have a is it fully approved? Because that's one of the legal problems here on mandating it, is it's not fully approved, even though it's widely used under an emergency authorization.
that
It's funny.
good question, Mike, but I don't know the answer.
Yeah. Well, what surprises me, Mike, regarding that is the vaccine itself has not been approved, but the booster shot has. I was
Oh,
very
is that-
surprised about that.
That
I
doesn't make
was
any
like-
sense. Wow.
Right? It's like, okay, so the vaccine itself not approved, but the booster shot, yes.
Huh.
So
Joe,
I keep
are you in Goose Bay?
Yes, that's exactly where I am. Just where you're picturing it on the map is where we are. If you can zoom in with
You'll
high
wave?
enough resolution, I'll open the window to the motel room and wave at you.
Oh boy. Hey, is Canada by percentage doing any better than the United States?
I believe we are slightly ahead in terms of first doses and fully vaccinated now.
I mean, how about cases per like 100,000 people?
Much lower, always have been.
Okay.
But yeah, if they weren't, I would be thinking like, okay. After all those distancing and masks and bubbles and vaccines and everything, if they're not ahead of us, might as well drop everything.
Well, it's interesting for me because when we were in Prince Edward Island, we wanted to go, we felt so comfortable that we thought, let's go to a musical production here. They had something at the Confederation Center, which is like their arts center. So we went to get tickets and we went for a matinee. And it was like a huge hassle to get 2 seats way off in the corner of like they were about the shittiest seats in the house you could imagine. And they weren't cheap. But we thought, how many times do we get to Prince Edward Island and see a musical? So we took the tickets. And then even in seating the auditorium, you have to seat in color codes, like when you board an airplane. So I was watching this and I'd never seen anything like it before. So I asked the person in charge, I said, is this your normal process for loading an auditorium? And she said, no, this is just since COVID. It's for contact tracing. So they load you in color cohorts. They have your name and address in case there is an outbreak in anybody reported in the auditorium, that they can contact you by this people seated in the same section as you. And the tickets that we got, we thought the place had been sold out. Okay, so that's why we got these last crummy little seats, but no, they seat you as far apart from other patrons as possible so that there's a big space. In fact, our tickets were so bad and there was no one else in our entire other section that I went down and got us moved to another part of the section. I've never seen anything like this before or heard of it. So
They probably thought they were giving you the best seats in the house, the safest seats in the house.
Well, that's right. They were doing it based on safety, and we were focused as normal on how well we could see the stage. And we
We
had
forgot
this-
about COVID.
yeah. I mean, it just wasn't. It wasn't part of our consciousness.
The musical was that good.
Well,
Well, not very good. They were singing with masks on, so that takes away from the sound.
Oh boy. I look
Sorry, I
forward to
interrupted you, Joel.
this being behind us. Seems to me they're doing a really good job of cataloging all the who's who and personal information through this.
It's
pandemic.
getting really nasty. It's getting really nasty. This polarization is going to tear us all apart.
Yeah, it could.
If Florida was a country, it would be number 2 as the most cases or something like that. So we're
Some of the there's been some findings though that some of the reporting is artificially high for Florida, and I suspect that's just a political attack on our conservative governor.
Well, I only have one word to say about all this COVID thing, and that word is de-escalation. As a matter of fact, I just don't want to talk about it. I want to de-escalate it so much that I just don't want to talk about it. It's just that I'm done with it.
It fits the cremation industry.
Well, let me make money quietly, okay? Well, going back to the uncertainty principle and the declaration that we create reality, we create the universe because we look at it. I would like to take a poll here and maybe talk about this. I think it's an interesting subject because everybody, I see it everywhere, I hear it everywhere, and people say it just with a natural flair, saying, "Yeah, I create the world because I look at it." I would like to know everybody's opinion about that one. Do we create reality? Do we create the universe just because we're looking at it? Is there a distinction between physical world and mental world? Is there a distinction between the world being there and the knowledge of the world being there? Okay, there, if anyone is interested.
I would say that you are a sensor or a complex set of sensors and processes of those sensing. So if you're strictly sensing, you're not creating. Maybe one extreme bit of evidence is should somebody use a hallucinogenic and they start to hear colors or smell shapes, that's real enough to them, but it doesn't change the real world.
Okay, so first one, what I hear from you is that we are the world looking at itself through a series of organismic sensors, input, output, and processing. Okay, that's a good one. Any other ideas out there?
So we are insufficient and incomplete,
Okay.
incapable of the creation of the universe.
Okay.
And very much newcomers.
So, okay, I would add to the first statement, according to what you're saying, that it is the universe, which is the whole, complete, that looks at itself through its part with a certain degree of completeness. Okay.
I don't understand what you mean by heart. Go ahead, Don.
Huh?
I don't know what you mean by heart, and then Dominic gets next.
All right, Dominic.
I use analogy maybe, guys, as we're a dot on the paper. The paper is the world, and we individually are the dot, and we have variations of perception within our own dot. The world itself is, I think, is a little bit too massive for me to perceive it in all its parts. So,
Okay. Hence incomplete.
finding
You know, like Rami is saying that, you know, we humans are incomplete. We're not big enough to see the whole.
But if
are
I'm actually
we, though?
seeing that, hold on, I was going to say, if I can actually see that, I don't know about being complete, and that's under the assumption that we can be complete, but I'm just making an awareness,
Well,
and maybe
yeah,
that's
yeah.
as far as it'll get for me anyway.
Is the world complete? Is the universe complete as it is?
I'm going on.
Notwithstanding any observation of it?
I'm talking about my own observation of myself. Like
Yeah.
you said, the world, I can see the world at the same time as I can see myself, meaning that I can see the plants and all the animals. We just make, I can make the assumption that I'm actually, because it's like when somebody says it's my life. No, you're within life. So in this case, I'm within the plane of what we call the world. I have to include the sky, the sun,
Right.
the moon, and all that. So, but
And
as
yourself.
a species individually, and then maybe look at it as a collective, then we can start talking, well, I can't say we, talk about the concept of incomplete and complete, only
Right,
as a species.
right.
Consciousness goes within all of that, but then again, we can have our own little dot version of consciousness.
Mhm.
So,
And any other input out there?
Yes.
So, okay, go ahead.
Look.
Jairo.
Here's the findings of a brilliant mathematician who is the leading edge in many of the most dramatic developments of the 1930s and 40s. He was important in the creation of our computer. And so now this is the result, Zoom. Yeah, let's see. And he also developed strategic game theory. And that's why Mike on the bike is out there strategizing. Let's see. Von Neumann, he reasoned that as the measurement proceeds in a physical experiment, which involves an observer, the electrons pass through the experimental apparatus and they hit the recorder. And then this causes a stimulus on the retina of the observer looking at it. But he says the observer's eye and brain is also physical and must be regarded as part of the measuring setup. Each point of the process is itself a physical event that must be governed by quantum theory and that cannot therefore itself be responsible from wave to particle. So what causes light to go from wave to particle? The only special moment in the whole process is the moment at which the experimenter, the observer, becomes conscious of the result of the measurement. This then must be the point at which the electron wave actually becomes an electron particle. It happens in the mind. In the mind.
So I wrote that my mind automatically goes to the question of if a tree falls in a forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? How do you deconflict the outcomes of those two, or do you find that there are two correct answers or a controversial answer based on that comment or that, you know,
Yeah,
that
there are two
publication?
correct answers. You just pointed the answer by asking the question properly. There are two correct answers, although they appear to be incorrect when you oppose them to each other in the conventional sense, but in the non-conventional sense, they harmonize each other. And the answer to the particle or photon or electron going from through two slits at the same time or one at a time, they are both correct. The particle goes through both slits and to one slit at the same time. But depending on how you perspectivize the scenario, because the observer, which in this case they talk about the human mind, is it not in reality the whole of the universe observing itself? So the moment that
No.
the universe does not observe itself.
Well, I'm speaking of the observer.
Is it not part of the universe?
What define the observer?
The part of the whole?
Because it is part of the whole, it doesn't have knowledge of the whole.
But is it not the whole? Is the observer, if the part not the whole?
Which observer?
Any part, any observer. Is it not the whole itself?
Well, can the ant observe Antares?
Observing what?
I described a star far off in the distance of space. Can an ant observe Antares? Can an ant on the North American continent know what a kangaroo on Australia is?
Right. Probably not. In conventional terms, not. But is not the ant also Antares and the world as a whole? Is the ant other than the whole, the world, the universe, the cosmos?
Piece of it.
It's a piece of it, so it's it. Now, however small it might be, but it is.
Here's
So
another
any
question.
observation.
Complete your thought, because I want to give a full response to
Yeah.
whatever you're saying.
I am proposing that any observation of the whole or part of the whole is of the whole, by the whole, through the whole. So the observed, the observing, and the observer are the same one thing, which is the whole,
Okay.
if you want to call that a thing.
Okay. So in your mind, the act of any awareness collectively is what I would say would be a subset of the universal observer.
Yep. Yep.
So Martin Buber gave us a 1923 work called I and Thou, and I used it to describe the ant. But here's a question for the group. Is the ant also part of the thou? And you may need background on that differentiation between its and thous, or its and
But
eyes.
you can subdivide the whole in however many different parts with different aspects, different specs, specifications, or whatever. But at the end of the exercise, any part of the whole is the whole. It's not other than the whole, separated from the whole, or So, like Don said, we are a speck on the paper being the whole. And I'm quick to add that the paper is eternal and infinite. There's no end to the paper because it's the whole. And so basically, it doesn't matter if we're talking about an ant, a star, a guy in New York, a photon, or any phenomenon that is distinguishable from the background, which is the zero Kelvin. But anything that happens, anything that is or is not, is the whole. That's my proposition.
So how did you come to the conclusion or the position of faith that time and space are both infinite?
Okay, so because the whole is constantly changing, it's a universal constant, Everything is changing all the time. Nothing stays the same from one nanosecond to the next. It doesn't matter if we look at the very, very infinitesimal or the cosmological levels. Everything is constantly changing and moving. So no thing, and I use the no space thing, no phenomenon, stays the same from one second to the other, to simplify it. And that being the case, for something to be different now than it was a second ago, it has to stop being what it was a second ago, then not be that thing, and then become something else. So at some point, there is a